So I'd like to share with you something that is very alive for me right now. As I mentioned, I had a rather unconventional anagarika period in India. And before I left, Venerable very kindly allowed me to live with her for, I think it was about a month before I left. So I was off to India to explore monastic life, to separate myself from family and friends and see how that would go. And so one day before I was set to leave, I was feeling very attached to my friends and bemoaning the fact that I was leaving all my friends behind. And I was sharing this with Venerable, and she gave me good advice. She said, "Don't worry, you'll make new ones." At the time, I thought, well, that's a bit calloused. But actually, it proved to be true. And I would say that some of the best friends that I have made along the way have been the four immeasurables. And so I thought to share a little bit about that. So whether we're ordained or not, these four immeasurable thoughts are very good friends that actually can lead us to happiness. Because as we've been learning, ordinary friends are subject, just like we are, they're subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilements, etc. But not the four immeasurables. They're pure from the beginning to the end. And they're always available. There's never a time that they say, sorry, I can't help. So we can always tune into them. And they remind us where real happiness comes from. So much of the time we're looking outside of ourselves for happiness. And we've heard the teachings about karma, but still the habit is to look outside. But when we really cultivate a close acquaintance with these immeasurables, then we know that happiness comes from our own mind. And slowly, slowly, we can start filling in that hole that some of us have described feeling throughout our lives. So loving kindness is like the main friend, and the other three grow out of loving kindness. And so in Pali, I really enjoy reading the Pali sutras about this and the Pali descriptions. Maybe I've done that in previous lives, I don't know. But loving kindness is called Metta Bhavana. Can't you just hear Goenka saying that? Metta Bhavana. So metta means friendliness or goodwill or non-harm. It's a very friendly, benevolent attitude to cultivate. And so really it's this strong wish to be of benefit to ourselves, to bring benefit and happiness to ourselves and others. And so in Metta is this altruistic attitude. Of course, it's very different than the ordinary friendship that we often rely on. And true metta, they say, is like building a reservoir within ourselves, a reservoir of well-being and safety for others that can grow immeasurably with practice. So imagine that cultivating and growing stronger and stronger to be just this huge reservoir for every sentient being. So metta or loving kindness can become our basic attitude towards anyone we meet. And I don't know about you, I aspire to that, but it's certainly not what happens. You know, on a good day, if things are going well, sure, that can be my attitude. But, you know, throw a little stress in there, like last Monday. And it's difficult to present with seeing each person I meet as a friend. And so metta is like a practice of generosity. It's just a pure one-way flow. How can you lose when there's just this wish for others to have happiness and the causes of happiness? Very different from what we might normally think of as attachment, which is how can you make me happy? And of course, it's a win-win because by promoting the well-being, the happiness of others, even in small ways, we don't have to become Mother Teresa overnight. Really, just small ways, smiling at someone, doing something to help them in a small way. As we contribute to the well-being of others, we naturally contribute to our own well-being. And then bhavana means cultivation or meditation or developing qualities that we may not have yet. But what's interesting, what I have found, and I bet you've experienced this too, is that on one hand, when I sit down to do the metta practice, I am cultivating a stronger relationship, a stronger habituation with loving kindness. And the more I learn about it, the richer the practice becomes. It's not just a little feel-good meditation, for sure. But at the same time, metta practice helps me to discover the loving kindness and the well-being that's already there in my mind and helps me to water those seeds. I'm sure you've discovered this too. So it seems like these two things are true about cultivating metta and the other immeasurables as well. So it's interesting that in the Pali tradition, you read a lot about how these four immeasurables are about cultivating the jhanas. We don't hear so much about that in our own tradition. And yet it's there. It's to be discovered and cultivated as well. And in addition to the jhanas, which have a lot to do with the higher training in concentrations, it's based on ethics, it also is a foundation then or support for cultivating our wisdom. In addition to that, mostly in our tradition, the Tibetan tradition, we find the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion and equanimity, those three in particular, as something that will help us to cultivate our bodhicitta. So I can recall a few challenging periods in my monastic life where I was struggling with some deep grief when the year that my teacher was assigned to be the just blanking on the word, the tantric, what is it? Yeah, the umse. Yeah, my teacher was assigned to be the umse at one of the tantric colleges, and so he left pretty abruptly. And it was one of those reckoning moments where I realized that not only was I taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but also in a human being. And it was a very painful period of my life. And I found turning towards cultivating metta for myself in particular, but also for other beings, a very soothing balm at that period of time. Also, other periods of my life where maybe there was a bit of disillusionment or other afflictions that were plagued. Maybe I was disappointed in myself when strong anger was arising. I have found loving kindness to be a steady friend to come back to again and again. So generally, loving kindness practice focuses on two things: the repetition of phrases. It's not difficult. In one way, it's not difficult. And also thinking about different recipients of our loving kindness. So there are times where I really appreciate the phrases from the Pali tradition. I like Jack Kornfield's verses where he starts with, may I be filled with loving kindness. Just to wish that for ourselves is so precious. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer harms, dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be peaceful and truly happy. And just to repeat those again and again for ourselves, it's suggested that we think of a benefactor, someone we're not attached to, someone we have a lot of respect for as the second recipient, and then a dear friend and a stranger, and someone that we're finding difficult. So sometimes those phrases really speak to me. Other times I like the Mahayana verses. How wonderful it would be if I had happiness and its causes. May I have these. I shall cause myself to have these. Shakyamuni Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. So especially for those of us who maybe feel like we grew up with a lack of love or maybe have a predisposition for anger, this is good medicine and one that we need to focus on. So as far as the recipients, as I've mentioned, we can use the basic phrases, but also I like to follow the Pali text sometime and really imagine extending loving kindness out into the East, into all the beings who live in the East and all the beings that live in the South and the North and the West. What I find happening in my mind when I do this meditation is that it seems like it expands my mind to get much bigger, so that those small insults, those small irritations have a much larger container to run around in, and they don't bump so hard against the edges. So I find that very helpful. And the reason I thought to bring this up today is because there are so many ways that loving kindness practice can benefit us personally as well as being members of a community. The Buddha spoke about 11 specific benefits of loving kindness meditation. Maybe you're familiar with those. You sleep better. That's always a benefit. You have good dreams. You wake up easily. But what I find very beneficial in community life is that when I see others through the eyes of affection, I'm a much happier person to live with. I'm more likely to see that person's good qualities rather than picking on their faults. Um, and as I try to stay more mindful about loving kindness through the day, several things seem to be true. One is that it naturally increases my mindfulness for ethics, the other, and the precepts that I'm holding. Um, I'm much more likely to be conscientious of my speech and my actions, and keeping me more mindful of my values and in integrity. Loving kindness also keeps the mind very balanced and resilient with the ups and downs of monastic life and the pressures that come with that. And when I'm in touch with my own goodness, I'm much more likely to be in touch with your goodness. So there's a win-win there. And I think one of the most important things that I've found with this practice is that even when someone is angry with me or expressing a harmful intent, or at least that's how I'm perceiving it, when I can come back to loving kindness from the heart and radiate that, then I can choose to be warm and loving towards that person. I don't have to respond and be jerked around by the perceived anger or difficulty that's coming from them. So I think as people interested in living with community, loving kindness is really one of the best positive states of mind, one of the most sublime states that we can spend time cultivating. Again, it may seem like it's just a feel-good meditation, but actually when we explore it further, we find that it can take us all the way to enlightenment. And we'd have to add some wisdom in there, but it's a very important quality. So this is a practice that's very alive in me right now. When I stepped away a couple weeks, or last week, a couple weeks ago, how long ago? Several days ago. This was the practice that I went to, and I feel like it really served me.